All right. Welcome back for another deep dive, you guys.
Always fun.
Yeah, today we're going to be looking at some excerpts from this book
Okay.
called The Secret Rituals of the O.T.O.
Interesting.
It's edited by Francis King, and we're hoping to kind of unpack some of this and explore the history of the Ordo Templi Orientis, the O.T.O. as it's better known,
Sure.
and look at some of the rituals and connections to occult templarism and just see what we find.
It's a fascinating subject, and this book really does a great job of not just presenting the information, but also getting you thinking about the psychology of it all.
Yeah.
Like what draws people to these kinds of organizations?
Right.
What are they hoping to find?
Exactly.
It really gets under the surface.
So the book opens up with the O.T.O's 1917 manifesto.
Okay.
And, you know, on the surface, it kind of sounds pretty high-minded. You know, it's talking about truth and self-knowledge and lost mysteries.
Yeah.
But then we find out that a lot of that was kind of a smokescreen.
Right, and that's one of the first hints we get that there's a whole lot more going on beneath the surface with the O.T.O.
Right.
The manifesto downplays their connections to Freemasonry.
Right.
But behind the scenes, they're actually operating as a recruiting ground for these clandestine Masonic groups.
So they're presenting this public face, but then in private, they're doing something else entirely.
Exactly, yeah.
What was the purpose of that?
You know, it's hard to say for sure, but I think it speaks to their obsession with secrecy and control.
Yeah.
They were very deliberate about who they let in and what information they shared.
Okay.
Even Aleister Crowley's message in the manifesto, which focuses on will and love, it kind of hints at a much deeper, more esoteric understanding of these concepts.
And it makes you think about, you know, the history of secret societies in general.
Absolutely.
There's always been this fascination, right, with the hidden, with the forbidden.
The idea that there's this knowledge that's just out of reach for most people.
And to really get to the bottom of the O.T.O., we have to go back even further to the 18th and 19th century and look at occult templarism.
Exactly. And this is where we start to see these theories emerging that connect Freemasonry to the Knights Templar, who were, you know, suppressed back in 1314.
Yeah, Knights Templar, warrior monks, secret ritual.
Always a good story.
Hidden treasure, all that.
Exactly. It's a recipe for intrigue.
Yeah.
And one of the key figures in these early Templar groups was Martins de Pasquale.
Okay.
And he practiced ritual magic.
Right.
Now, what's interesting is that the book talks about him using incense that was made with ingredients that had hallucinogenic properties.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So, you know, right from the start, we're seeing this kind of pushing the boundaries of consciousness.
Yeah.
And there's this crazy anecdote in the book about Abbé Fournier claiming to have seen and heard de Pasquale after his death.
It's like a ghost.
It's like a ghost story right in the middle of all this occult history.
Right.
And then you have Fabre Pelleprat, who wrote this book called Manuel des Chevaliers du Temple. And in this book, he argues that the Order of the Temple was actually the true Church of Christ.
So they're claiming like a direct lineage to early Christianity.
Yeah, bypassing the established church altogether.
Bold move.
Very bold. And to support this claim, they relied on a document called the Charter of L'arminius, which later turned out to be a forgery.
A forgery. So
a forgery.
They were creating their own history.
They were creating their own narrative, which you see that throughout history. People trying to connect themselves to something ancient and powerful.
Yeah.
And this blending of history and myth and esoteric beliefs becomes really central to the O.T.O's own identity.
So then we jump forward to the late 19th century.
Okay.
German occultists start to get really interested in templarism, inspired by the writings of Eliphas Levi.
Right.
And that's where Karl Kellner comes in.
Yes. Karl Kellner, he's credited with founding the O.T.O. around 1896.
Okay.
And he was convinced that the original Knights Templar practiced sexual magic.
Sexual magic, okay.
And that he had rediscovered this doctrine through secret Oriental adepts.
That's interesting, the Oriental connection there.
There's definitely this fascination with the East,
right,
Western occultism during this period.
Okay.
But, there's some uncertainty around Kellner's teachers,
Right.
the source of his knowledge.
Sure.
Some scholars think he might have even fabricated some of these connections.
So how did Kellner's ideas...
Well, one theory is that Franz Hartmann,
Okay.
co-founder of the journal Oriflamme,
Yeah.
played a key role.
Okay.
He was a respected figure in occult circles.
Right.
And his involvement with Oriflamme helped to spread Kellner's ideas.
Okay, so Oriflamme is the journal.
Yeah, and at first, they were pretty secretive about the O.T.O.
Okay.
But eventually they started explicitly promoting it.
Mm-hmm.
They even revealed that the key to Masonic and religious secrets was sexual magic.
They just came right out and said it.
They put it right out there, yeah.
Okay.
It was a bold move.
Yeah.
And after Kellner died, Theodore Rius took over.
Okay.
And expanded the O.T.O's structure and degrees.
And then, of course, Rius is the one who brings Aleister Crowley.
Yes. Crowley's initiation into the O.T.O. really marks a turning point.
Right.
He eventually becomes the head of the British section, Mysteria Mystica Maxima.
Right.
And his influence really shapes the O.T.O. into what it is today.
And Crowley, of course, is
quite a controversial figure.
Very much so. Adds to the mystique.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, after Rius died.
Right. There were several disputed claims to the succession.
Right.
Which led to different factions within the O.T.O.
So some infighting even.
Yeah. It's not uncommon in these types of organizations, the combination of secrecy and power and esoteric knowledge can lead to conflict.
So we've talked about the history and the secrecy, the controversial figures. But what about the rituals themselves?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
That's what we'll delve into next time.
Okay. All right.
We'll look at the initiation rituals, starting with the Minerval ritual, the entry point into this world of hidden knowledge.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Let's get into it next time.
Yeah, then.
All right. See ya. Welcome back, you guys.
Glad to be back.
So last time we left off, promising to look at some of the rituals. You ready to get into that?
Absolutely. This is where things get really juicy.
Yeah, the book gives us some pretty interesting glimpses into these rituals and practices.
It's a unique blend of symbolism and esoteric teachings. Right. And, of course, the sexual magic that we talked about before.
Okay, so let's start with the Minerval ritual, the first step, right?
Yes, the entry point.
Into the O.T.O. system.
Exactly. And this one takes place in a dimly lit conical tent.
Okay.
There's a single candle illuminating Saladin.
Saladin.
Yeah, who's dressed in full Oriental garb.
Okay.
Sitting before an altar with a
Saladin, like the Muslim leader.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice, isn't it?
Yeah.
And on the altar, there's 3 key items.
Okay.
The Book of the Law, a sword, and a platter of bread and salt.
So you've got...
a mix of elements, right?
Yeah, you've got religious and martial and...
Yeah, the mundane. Yeah.
And the candidate is brought in blindfolded and bound.
Oh, wow.
Presented to Saladin as a prisoner.
Okay, what's the point of doing that?
Well, I think it's designed to create a sense of disorientation and vulnerability.
Right, to kind of break them down a bit.
Exactly. You're breaking down the ego, making them more receptive to what's to come.
Yeah. Okay, so, and then what happens?
Well, then the candidate has to swear an oath.
Okay.
To keep the O.T.O's secrets.
Right.
And the book makes it very clear that this was not to be taken lightly.
Right.
It actually describes in pretty graphic detail what happened if the oath was broken.
Oh, so they're serious about this.
Very serious.
Yeah.
Secrecy is paramount in the O.T.O.
Okay, so they swear the oath.
Yes, and then they're given a sign, a grip, and a password.
Okay.
The password is On, which represents the sun in ancient Egyptian.
Yeah. So even at this early stage, you're starting to introduce symbolism and...
Yeah, you're laying the groundwork for a whole new way of thinking.
Yeah.
This is just the beginning.
Right, the first step on a long journey.
Exactly.
So then what about the first degree ritual?
Well, the first degree builds on this foundation.
Okay.
It's described as a journey from darkness to light.
Right.
Symbolized by the candidate traveling through 9 moons.
9 moons.
9 moons, yeah.
Okay, I don't know what that...
The book doesn't go into detail, but...
What's that? What's that all about?
It seems to represent a period of gestation.
Okay.
Or transformation.
Right.
The number 9 has occult significance in a lot of traditions.
Sure.
It often represents completion or cycle coming to an end.
All right, and then what happens after the 9 moons?
Well, the candidate is immersed in the well.
Oh, wow.
And then symbolically reborn.
So like a death and rebirth.
Yeah.
Exactly. A classic motif in initiation rituals.
Right, you're washing away the old self.
You're shedding the old and embracing the new.
Okay.
And this theme of death and rebirth
Right.
is something we see again and again in the O.T.O system.
All right, so what about the second and third degrees?
Well, the second and third degrees go even deeper.
Okay.
They involve more serious oaths,
Mm-hmm.
an emphasis on the rights of man,
Okay.
and further symbolic death and resurrection experiences.
So each degree is kind of like a step up?
It's a progression.
Yeah.
You're going deeper and deeper into the mysteries.
But what are they actually learning?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The book is a bit vague on the specifics.
Right.
But it does mention that the third degree word is one of the most closely guarded secrets.
Okay.
So clear.
The deeper you go, the more secretive it gets.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
The higher the stakes.
And it makes you wonder what they're trying to hide, right?
It really does.
Yeah.
And the book hints that some of these higher degree teachings involve concepts like sexual magic and the union of opposites.
Right. So that's coming back in.
It's a recurring theme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have these higher degrees with their secret teachings and rituals. But the book also talks about this this concept of the homunculus.
Ah, yes, the homunculus.
Can you tell us more about that?
Well, that's a whole other can of worms. Yeah.
It's a fascinating and complex concept that emerges in the 9th degree instruction.
Okay.
And we'll delve into that more next time.
Okay, so we've got
it's mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah, we've got secret societies and hallucinogenic incense and symbolic death and rebirth. Mm-hmm. And now we're talking about magically created beings.
Buckle up.
Yeah, this is a wild ride.
It's gonna be a wild ride. Okay, well let's see where it takes us next time.
See you then.
All right, welcome back to the O.T.O deep dive.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying this.
Mm-hmm.
So last time we kind of left off with this idea of a homunculus, this magically created being.
Right.
I'm really curious to hear more about this.
Well, it's a concept that really captures the imagination.
Yeah.
And the book presents a few different interpretations of what the homunculus actually is.
Okay, well, what are those?
Well, one perspective is that it's a literal physical being created through alchemical processes.
So like a tiny human.
Like a tiny human, yeah.
Brought to life?
Brought to life in a lab.
Sort of magic.
Yeah, almost like a
Frankenstein kind of thing.
Yeah, Frankenstein, but with magic.
Right.
But the book does point out that achieving this would be incredibly difficult.
Sure.
Even for the most skilled magician. Right. So it's probably more of a theoretical possibility than a practical one.
What's the second interpretation?
The second interpretation focuses more on the psychological or spiritual level.
Okay.
So instead of a physical being, the homunculus represents a transformation within the individual.
So it's like it's not external, it's internal.
It's something that's cultivated through spiritual practice and magical work.
So kind of creating a new self.
Yeah, a new perfected self.
Right, a more evolved self.
Exactly. It's about spiritual evolution.
Okay, and then what about that third, darker interpretation?
Yeah, the third one's a bit more sinister.
Okay.
It suggests that the homunculus could be a demonic or spiritual entity that takes possession.
Like a possession, yeah.
Yeah, of a human being. Essentially replacing their soul.
So it's not creating something new. It's inviting something in.
Exactly. It's a spiritual takeover.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got these different interpretations, but the book also outlines a specific method for creating one, right?
Yeah. And this is where the sex magic comes in.
Ah, of course.
It involves a carefully selected man and woman who engage in continuous ritualistic intercourse within a specially prepared temple.
Oh, all right. Sounds intense.
Yeah, it's about harnessing that sexual energy and directing it towards a specific goal.
Okay.
And when the woman becomes pregnant, she's taken to a remote location, ideally like a vast desert, to minimize the chance of other souls.
Right, so you want to isolate.
Isolate. Yeah, keep it controlled.
Right, and then what?
Well, then the magician performs daily evocations, calling forth the specific spirit that they want to embody.
So you're trying to shape...
You're shaping the soul of the homunculus.
Right, even before it's born.
Even before it's born.
Wow. Okay,
and throughout the pregnancy, the woman is surrounded by books and images and ideas that align with the nature.
Right, to kind of program it.
Yeah, you're programming the environment.
Right.
Creating the ideal conditions for this spirit to take root.
So, and then the birth itself.
The birth, ideally, should be aligned with favorable astrological conditions.
So astrology plays a role, too.
Astrology, sex magic, spirit evocation.
Right, it's all coming together here.
Ritual, it's all woven together.
Wow.
And once the child is born, it has to be dedicated, purified, and consecrated according to the specific planet or element or sign.
Right, so it's like you're customizing this being.
It's a custom-made spiritual being.
Wow. Oh, yeah. And what's the end goal here?
Well, the book describes the end result as a being with a perfect human form, possessing all the powers and privileges of humanity, but with this added essence of the chosen force.
So it's about power, ultimately.
It's about power, yeah. The power to create life, to shape destiny, and to command this force.
It's pretty heady stuff.
It is, and the book does caution that this is incredibly difficult to achieve.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, did anyone actually succeed?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
We may never know.
Yeah, but you know, even if it was never achieved, the very idea of attempting this raises all sorts of ethical questions.
Absolutely. You're talking about manipulating a soul, shaping the being's destiny.
Yeah, it really challenges our ideas of free will and what it means to be human.
At its core, it really gets to the heart of what it means to be human.
And I think what's so fascinating about the O.T.O. is that they're willing to go there.
They're not afraid to explore those dark corners to push those boundaries.
And that's what makes them so compelling, right?
Absolutely. They force us to confront these uncomfortable questions about ourselves.
Yeah, and about the universe.
Yeah, about the nature of reality.
It's just it's so interesting.
It really is.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
What would you say is the biggest takeaway for the listener?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the search for truth and meaning can take many forms.
Right.
The O.T.O., with all its complexities and contradictions, is just one path among many.
Yeah, it's a reminder to be open-minded.
Be open-minded.
Yeah.
To question your assumptions and to approach these mysteries with both curiosity and a healthy dose of skepticism.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the O.T.O.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And for all you listeners out there, keep exploring, keep questioning.
Keep diving deep.
And we'll see you next time.
See you then.